She called me low class, with a smile like she was passing the salt, and the pastry fork in my hand suddenly felt like a gavel. We were at the tasting in Oak Brook, almond raspberry samples sweating under the lights, when Ava let her eyes dip to my work boots under the tablecloth and said, just loud enough for the room, "Some looks can't be fixed with money." No offense, Liam. The word low class clanged off glass and bone and settled where a man keeps his pride. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from. I studied the fondant roses and counted to 5 the way my wife taught me when anger made my jaw lock. Across from us, her father, Gregory, nodded in that patient boardroom way, the heavy ring on his finger catching the chandelier like a signal flare. He'd mispronounced streets I've driven since 1993, the last 2 times we met. Today, he called the town Oak Brook and asked if I worked in the trades, like 3 decades of schedules. The budgets and people were just a category on a clipboard. Priya, the planner, stepped in with a laminated chart and a lifeline. "Venue guarantee on file," she said, pen ticking the page. "Deposit of 18,400 received. Remaining 13,400 due Friday, September 20th by 4 p.m. Ava turned that winter polite smile on me. "Assuming we're comfortable proceeding," she added, as if granting me a favor with my own money. Outside, the late afternoon sun turned the mums to copper coins. Liam leaned in and hugged me quick, the way a son does when he's trying to hold 2 loyalties with one pair of arms. "Dad, she's stressed," he said. "Gregory's hosting the after-party at the club." A black SUV idled at the curb, windows sliding down like a stage queue. "Good to have you on board, Mr. Dalton," Gregory said, voice warm and generic. "We'll make this tasteful." He almost said tasteful like surgical, Route 83 unspooled, like a measuring tape on the drive back to Naperville. At a red light, I touched the cashier's check stub in my pocket, the deposit I'd laid down for my son's day, thin as a scab. Glass, I thought, isn't crystal. It's what you do when the bill comes. At home, the kitchen smelled like coffee and cut grass drifted in from the yard. I spread my life on the table, florist estimate, 3,200, Tuck's deposit receipt, venue contract folded to the signature line with my name printed neat as Sunday. On a yellow legal pad, I wrote 3 questions in block letters. Who are they? What's real? Where's the money? Priya's voice from the tasting ran in my head. Balance due Friday by 4. A clock you can hear is a gift. It tells you how long you have to decide who you are. I underlined the line that mattered. I controlled the final payment and felt something settle. Ava wanted the look of money. I wanted the truth paid in full. I replayed her smile, the way Oak Brook rolled off Gregory's tongue like he'd learned it 5 minutes before. The ring that flashed when the room was watching. The way he asked what I did in the trades, but never asked where I'd worked. Tiny things, like threads sticking out of a brand new suit. I slid the florist estimate into an envelope, replaced it with the legal pad, and wrote a 4th line. What I fund, I verify. My contribution just changed from centerpieces to certainty. I capped the pen, pulled my phone closer, and scrolled to the 2 names I needed first. If class is truth, then the most expensive thing at this wedding was about to be honesty, paid up front and on time. I didn't sleep that night. The taste of almond filling and humiliation stuck to the roof of my mouth like old sugar. By morning, I'd replayed her words 100 times, low class, each one sanding a little more skin off the memory. I kept hearing my wife's voice in my head, soft but certain. Don't let pride spend what peace can't afford. Sunday, September 15th. The house was too quiet. The clock in the kitchen ticked like it was keeping score. I took my wife's photo off the mantel, 5 by 7, edges worn, and said, I'm tired. Tired of being useful until someone wants a shinier story. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from. I put the photo on the table beside the florist estimate, the Tux rental slip, and the venue guarantee with my name stamped under guarantor, $18,400 down, $13,400 due Friday. If I pulled out, my son would call it sabotage. If I didn't, I'd be paying for my own insult. That's what collapse really is, when every move feels like losing. Liam stopped by around noon. He still had that earnestness that made people trust him. Ava didn't mean it, he said, taking a seat like the air was fragile. She just gets nervous around people. People? I said. You mean me? He winced. Dad, her parents are different. Gregory's exited 2 funds, old Hinsdale money. What funds? I interrupted. Names. He blinked, checked his phone. Why does it matter? Because every man who ever called me low class had something to hide, I said quietly. He changed the subject to cufflinks. I let him. You can't argue a man out of love, especially when he's knee-deep in a lie he hasn't seen yet. When he left, the air seemed to flatten. I sat at the table staring at my own handwriting. Who are they? What's real? Where's the money? At 6:22 p.m. I dialed Gina at the venue. She answered with that measured calm only event people have. Dalton Residence, she said automatically before catching herself. Oh, Mr. Dalton. Everything okay? Hypothetically, I said, what happens if a guarantor rescinds their authorization? She exhaled slowly. We'd hold final services until balance is met. You'd need to file a written notice by Tuesday morning to protect your position. So the wedding could continue if the other side pays? Yes, she said carefully. But your liability ends at the notice. That word, notice, felt like oxygen. After the call, I drove to Jewel Osco. What, coffee, printer ink, and a yellow legal pad? Nothing makes you feel sane, like buying supplies for a war no one knows you're fighting. I sat in the parking lot, watching headlights slide across my windshield. Inside the cart return, a young couple argued about floral arrangements. I envied them. They still believed weddings were about flowers. Back home, I made a pot of coffee strong enough to stand a spoon and opened my glove compartment. Receipts slid out like a paper avalanche. Gas, groceries, 2 oil changes, 1 tux deposit. My life, line-itemed. I picked out the ones that mattered, flattened them under a book, and stapled them to the back of my legal pad. Evidence isn't just proof, it's armor. At 8:14 p.m., I stared at the clock again. The seconds seemed louder now. I imagined Ava laughing with her parents over dinner, trading stories they'd rehearsed. I wondered how many people they'd fooled before us. Collapse isn't crying. It's calculation. It's when your humiliation turns into a spreadsheet. I started writing in columns. Date, vendor, amount. Status. Under status, I wrote 1 word for each. Paid, pending, unverified. That last one, unverified, sat there like a splinter. Gregory's club membership. The supposed family fortune, the guarantee signatures, everything about them felt polished but hollow, like a marble countertop glued over plywood. My hands stopped shaking when I wrote the next sentence. Reassign decoration budget to investigation. Closed the ledger, took another sip of bitter coffee, and opened my phone contacts. 2 names. One was Priya, the planner, who respected rules more than reputations. The other was Marco, a private investigator I'd used once when a subcontractor disappeared with $9,000 of company materials. He found the guy in Joliet in 3 days. I texted him, need verification on a family. Paying client, cash, you free tomorrow morning? The dots appeared instantly, then disappeared. 30 seconds later, meet at Dunkin' on Ogden, 9 a.m. Bring details. I exhaled for the first time all day. Outside, the cicadas were dying down, and the neighborhood smelled faintly of wood smoke. I turned off the lights one by one, leaving the table illuminated. Contracts, receipts, yellow pad, and my wife's photo at the center. Her smile looked half amused, half approving, as if she already knew what came next. Low class, I whispered again. But this time, it sounded less like an insult and more like a challenge. When I finally went to bed, the decision had already been made. Monday would not be about flowers or food tastings or tux fittings. It would be about verification. And for the first time that weekend, I slept soundly. Monday morning came wrapped in fog and the smell of burnt coffee. Oak Brook looked expensive even under grey skies. The kind of suburb where every brick pretends to be older than it is. I pulled into a Dunkin' on Ogden Avenue. Same booth I'd sat in 2 years earlier when I'd hired Marco to track down a subcontractor who'd forgotten to return $9,000 worth of equipment. Back then, I'd needed proof of theft. This time, I needed proof of pedigree. Marco was already there, halfway through a cruller, sleeves rolled up. "You always show up early," he said, eyeing the manila folder under my arm. "That means someone pissed you off." "She called me low class," I said, sliding into the booth. "That's not a crime." "No," I said, opening the folder. "But faking a family might be." Inside the folder, a napkin list scrawled in block letters. Gregory Harrington, Oakbrook Club, Cousin Elise, Mother Donna, and beneath it, one phrase that made Marco snort when he read it out loud. "Oakbrook? There's no E," he said, shaking his head. "People who live here know that." He jotted a note. "What's the play?" "Verification, background, any business filings, property records, memberships. If they exist, I'll find a way to respect them. If they don't, you'll what?" "Cancel a wedding." I stirred my coffee. "No, I'll refund a lie." I handed him $2,500 in cash. "Retainer," I said. He pocketed it without counting. "Give me 48 hours, he said. If they're ghosts, I'll know where the bodies are buried." When I stepped outside, the clouds had thinned to a damp shine. I called Priya next. She answered from somewhere loud, probably the print shop. "Morning, Mr. Dalton. Are we confirming linens today?" "I'm confirming something else," I said. "Have you ever met Ava's parents alone? Without her in the room?" Silence on the line. "Then only once, on Zoom. Their camera kept freezing when I asked for a billing address." "Why?" "Just curious," I said. "Can you send me the payment schedule again? I need it for my records." "Of course," she said, cautious now. Within minutes, her email landed. Subject line, venue and catering balance. Attached. A clean spreadsheet with my cashier's check listed under deposit received and a bright yellow cell marking. Balance due Friday 4 p.m. I stared at that timestamp like it was a countdown clock. 4 days to learn who I was funding. 4 days to decide whether I was signing for a wedding or underwriting a fraud. At 11:15 a.m., I drafted an email to Gina, the venue manager. Short, polite, surgical. Subject, conditional payment release. Final payment release subject to verification of co-sponsor capacity. Regards, R. Dalton. 10 words that shifted the center of gravity. I hit send and felt a strange calm spread through my chest. A line drawn is better than a wall built too late. That afternoon, I stopped by the Tux shop in Naperville to pick up Liam's fitting receipt. As I waited, I saw a man arguing with the clerk about jacket sizes. He looked familiar, the same uncle from last week's tasting. Different boutonniere pins, same polished shoes. He caught my eye and looked away too fast. My stomach knotted. Either this family had a cloning problem or their guest list was on rotation. By 6 o'clock, my phone buzzed. A text from Marco. No club membership under Gregory's name. No Harringtons in IL corporate filings. But there's a Gold Oak talent agency booking this week. Family event, upscale demeanor, light improv. Sound familiar? He attached a blurry screenshot, a rate card, hourly fees, and one description circled in red. Patriarch role, 250 HR. The world tilted for a second. The air in my kitchen felt too thin. My son's in-laws weren't real. They were rentals. I printed the screenshot, slid it into a manila folder labeled Truth, and wrote 2 words on my legal pad, Find Proof. Priya's spreadsheet sat beside it, the due date glowing like a flare. I thought about Ava's smirk when she said tasteful, the ring Gregory flashed, the way he'd called Oakbrook. All of it was theater. I poured a fresh cup of coffee and underlined my next move. Verify, record, and prepare leverage. By midnight, Marco had texted again. You're right. Gold Oak confirmed a bulk family package booking. 6 adults, 1 weekend, client initials AR. I exhaled. My wife's photo caught the lamplight from the counter. Actors, I told her softly. They rented a family. I picked up the florist estimate and laughed under my breath. $3,200 for flowers when the entire bloodline cost $7,500. Under Where's the Money? I wrote a new answer in the script, Then, in smaller letters beneath it, every roll has a call time. The next move would be mine. Tuesday morning, September 17th. The sun was too bright for what I planned to do. I woke before my alarm, brewed coffee that tasted like burnt resolve, and read Marco's overnight update twice more. 6 family members booked through Gold Oak Talent Agency. 7,500 flat rate. 1 weekend rental. Client name, A. Reynolds. Ava's maiden name. I drove to the venue in Oak. Brooke with the letter Gina had asked for tucked neatly. Inside a folder labeled Dalton Authorization. The office smelled of lemon cleaner and hydrangeas, money's version of fresh air. Gina greeted me with the kind of careful smile reserved for grooms, fathers, and problem clients. "Morning, Mr. Dalton. What can I help you with?" I handed her the letter. "This isn't about canceling the wedding," I said. "It's about protecting both of us from a fraud that's about to unfold under your chandeliers." She raised an eyebrow, but read the page. 1 sentence, 10 words. "Final payment contingent on verified payer identity." Her pen hovered, then drew a small check mark. "That'll do it," she said quietly. "We'll soft-hold the release. No services cancelled, just no final sign-off without your approval." That was the first lock. Not on a door, but on a story. Before I left, I asked, "What happens if the balance comes from someone new?" "As long as it's verifiable," she said, "we proceed, even if that someone is the bride." She tilted her head. "We've seen stranger things." At the counter, I noticed a stack of guest table cards waiting for print. Each one gleamed with the Harrington family embossed in gold. I felt a bitter laugh rise in my throat. "Maybe hold off printing these," I said. "There might be a spelling error." By noon, I was at Dirk's studio, a small warehouse in Downers Grove, where cables and camera cases lined the walls. Dirk was the wedding videographer, a quiet guy who filmed emotion better than speeches. I handed him an envelope with cash. "I need you for an extra hour," I said. "Early coverage." "Something like that." "Can your Bcam feed live to a screen?" He smirked. "We can patch anything." "Good. Make sure both cameras roll during family introductions." He nodded, sliding the cash into his pocket. "You expecting drama?" "I'm expecting honesty," I said. "They're different things, but one usually arrives loud." That was the second lock, optics. By afternoon, Priya texted me about seating charts and linen colors. I texted back, "Add QR codes to each guest's place card. I'll load the final PDF Friday." She replied with a thumbs-up emoji, none the wiser that her PDF would become my weapon. One file for the program, another for the truth. Around 4, Marco called. "You might want to sit down," he said. "I've got emails between Ava and Gold Oak Talent. Booking reference, payment proof, everything. Read me one." He cleared his throat. "We need a dignified father figure. Client's actual father, not a fit for image." My jaw tightened. "Total?" 7.5. "Includes wardrobe consult, scheduled call times, Friday rehearsal, Saturday photo session." "Send everything," I said. The email hit my inbox 10 minutes later. I printed it, highlighted Ava's line, and pinned it to my legal pad under evidence. The words glared back at me like neon. Actual father, not a fit. I walked through my house in silence, letting that phrase echo off the drywall. Every tool, every repair, every mortgage payment, not a fit. My wife's voice drifted through memory. "They can't shrink you if you don't let them measure." I took $2,000 more from the envelope labeled decorations and sealed it for Marco's final payment. Investigation costs to date, $4,500. Balance remaining, $2,300. Every dollar was a brick in a wall she couldn't see. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table again, my war desk now, and assembled the chain. Venue hold letter, signed. Videographer upgrade, confirmed. QR-coded programs, in progress. PI report, incoming. At the bottom I wrote, "Public proof requires public eyes." As night fell, I stepped onto the porch, air crisp with late September cold. Streetlights hummed above the empty road. Across the street, a family laughed over dinner, light flickering behind their curtains. Real family, no script, no rate card. I sipped my coffee, gone cold, and whispered, "They want a show." "Fine, I'll give them one." The first 3 moves were made. Locks engaged, camera armed, money traced, Revenge, I realized, isn't rage, it's choreography, and Saturday's wedding would be perfectly choreographed. Wednesday, September 18th. The rehearsal dinner wasn't supposed to be fancy, but Ava's version of casual looked like a magazine spread. Cream linens, string lights, a string quartet too polite to sweat. The restaurant in Hinsdale had a garden view, all twinkle and illusion. I wore my best button-down and left my work boots at home, figured the night already had enough props. I arrived early. The hostess led me to a long table that smelled of champagne and insecurity. The family was already seated. Gregory, the so-called father, waved me over with that false familiarity people use when they've forgotten your name. His wife adjusted her pearls and smiled too hard. Across the table, the cousin leaned into Ava and whispered something about call times before catching herself. Then she laughed and said rehearsal. It was the kind of slip only an actor makes. I sat. The silverware glinted under soft light. Ava's mother raised her glass. To family, she said. Gregory added, to unity. The irony almost choked me. I lifted my water glass and clinked theirs. To truth, I said. No one laughed. Halfway through dinner, the father asked me what kind of work I did. I told him project supervision. He nodded, as if that explained nothing and everything. Blue collar, he said. The way he said blue sounded like bruise. When dessert came, tiny lemon tarts on golden trays, Ava leaned over and said, Dad, maybe during the toast you could keep it short. For aesthetic reasons. For aesthetic reasons, I repeated. Sure, her mother chimed in. Some moments don't need a commentary. Don't worry, I said, smiling. I know when silence is appropriate. They didn't catch the double edge. Dirk's assistant hovered nearby, pretending to test his camera angles. I'd hired him for an extra hour of coverage, but we both knew what he was really doing, recording the cracks before they spread. His lens drifted toward the uncle, who was now telling the waiter about scene continuity. The waiter looked confused. I wasn't. After dessert, Gregory raised his glass again. To the future of our families, he said grandly, misnaming my son. To Liam Michael. My son's name is Liam James. The laughter around the table was brittle. Ava corrected him softly, her cheeks tightening. I hit record on my phone under the table, capturing every word. He kept going, voice slippery with arrogance. We'll be investing in Liam's next venture soon enough, he said. What venture? I asked. He blinked. The project. Liam's a teacher, I said. His project is 8th graders. He froze, eyes flicking toward Ava. Her fingers tightened around her wine glass. Dirk's camera didn't miss a frame. Afterward, I stepped outside into the crisp night. The valet stand smelled of cologne and exhaust. Priya was there, clipboard in hand, speaking to staff. I caught her eye. Tomorrow, I said quietly. I need those QR cards printed early. New latest? She nodded, eyebrows narrowing, but professional as ever. Any revisions to the PDF? Yes, I said, handing her a small USB drive labeled program. Same design. Load this file Friday morning, and keep an eye on your inbox in case I send a last-minute update. She tucked it away. Understood. She didn't know the second file on that drive, the one that would swap in automatically if triggered, was called Appendix, Vendor Credits and Disclosures. Inside was everything, the gold oak invoice, the email thread, the client name Ava Reynolds, and a tidy summary prepared by Marco titled Roll Distribution for Harrington Family, Confirmed. At 10:42 p.m., Marco texted again, from Marco. Got headshot of Gregory from agency roster. Different name, same watch, sending. The photo came through clear as daylight. Same face, same smirk, same gold tie. Rate 250. My phone buzzed again. Marco, they're pros. Do weekend charity gigs, commercials, even funerals. You're not the first. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at that photo until the screen dimmed. I wasn't angry anymore. I was surgical. I opened my legal pad and wrote across the top, Friday, 3:30 p.m., payment cutoff. Saturday, 12:45 p.m., photo call. Saturday, 4:10 p.m., toasts. Then I added one line beneath, truth must arrive on time. I closed the pad, placed my phone on top. and felt the stillness of a man who knows what's coming and has stopped being afraid of it. Out in the dark, a freight train moaned somewhere past Ogden Avenue. Its sound rolled through the night like a countdown. The show was almost ready. All it needed was an audience. Thursday, September 19th. A storm was supposed to roll through that evening, but Oakbrook woke up clear and calm, like the sky itself wanted a front-row seat. I made coffee and reread the emails Marco had sent overnight. Agency confirmations, client signatures, payment receipts. Every line of data a thread in Ava's tapestry of lies. At 9:17 a.m., I sat at my kitchen table and wrote a new heading on the yellow pad. Final stage, public proof. Beneath it, 3 bullet points. Witnesses verification, visibility. The plan was simple. If lies live for attention, then truth needs a spotlight. I emailed Oakbrook Vows, a small but sharp local wedding blog known for covering society events. My subject line was short. Saturday feature, notable family, interesting vendors. In the body I wrote, prominent family event this Saturday. Elegant setting. Compelling story about authenticity. You'll want to be there. I attached the legitimate contracts, venue, florist, catering, so they'd see it wasn't just gossip. Within an hour I got a reply, we'll be there. Noon call time, perfect. My silent press corps. By Friday afternoon, tension had a pulse. I drove to the venue office at 2:55 p.m. The place buzzed with deliveries and chatter, the faint hum of money turning into spectacle. Gina was at the counter, printer humming behind her. "Afternoon, Mr. Dalton. Here for the final payment release?" "Not yet," I said. "Any word from the bride's side?" She tapped a keyboard. "Still pending. Balance due in 5 minutes." We both watched the clock tick to 3. My letter, the one she'd signed, still ruled the account. No services without verified payer identity. Every minute past the deadline was leverage growing interest. At 3:17 p.m., my phone buzzed. Zelle, 132400 received from Ava Reynolds. Caption for Saturday, not from Gregory, not from any Harrington. From Ava, that was the tell. Money leaves fingerprints, and hers were now all over the wedding she claimed her family was funding. Gina scanned the payment notice and exhaled. "Well, that settles it," she said. "It settles something," I replied. "Not what she thinks." Minutes later, Marco called. "Got the final confirmation," he said. Gold Oak Talent sent out their weekend roster. Saturday, 12 noon call time. Client Ava Reynolds. Project private family event. Roles patriarch, matriarch, cousins, 6 total. Wardrobe notes, VC father, navy suit, gold tie. I laughed under my breath. "Gold tie," I repeated. "Even their accessories are on script." He sent me a PDF of the production sheet. I printed it and slid it into the truth folder, along with every receipt and email. My folder was heavier than the lies it contained. At 5:42 p.m., I drove to a small cafe near the venue. The blogger from Oakbrook Vows arrived. Mid-30s, sharp bob haircut, camera bag over her shoulder. "I'm covering your event," she said, half-smile. "Then you'll want these," I said, handing her a sealed envelope. She hesitated. "What's this?" "Verification materials. Open them if something doesn't add up tomorrow." Her eyebrows lifted, but she nodded. "Sounds like a story." That was the third lock. Press. Back home. I laid everything on the kitchen table. The folder, my phone, a flash drive labeled program.pdf and appendix.pdf. The first held the clean version of the wedding schedule. The second, the appendix, held the agency documents. Side-by-side headshots of Gregory the father and his actual name, Gordon Lacey, along with the talent invoice signed by Ava. I whispered to my wife's photo, "Tomorrow, sweetheart." We stopped financing delusions. Friday night, I couldn't sleep. I kept imagining the terrace under soft light, the photographer calling "family together," and me stepping forward with evidence instead of applause. I pictured the sound of glass breaking, not from rage, but from clarity. At midnight, Marco texted one final line. "They think it's a rehearsal. They have no idea the curtain's for them." I left my phone face down and stared at the ceiling. Revenge, I realized, is a lot like construction. You follow blueprints, pour foundation, and wait for the weather to hold. When dawn came, I suited up. Charcoal grey, pressed cuffs, quiet tie. The kind of outfit that doesn't scream money, but can sign a check. I slipped the folder marked Truth into my leather case and locked the house behind me. Saturday's forecast. Clear skies, light wind, and one storm scheduled for 12:45 p.m. I smiled. The stage was set. The audience didn't know it yet. Tomorrow, the cast would meet their critics. Saturday, September 21st. A morning so clean it looked ironed. The venue terrace shimmered under soft sunlight. Stone balustrades lined with chrysanthemums, the color of old gold. Guests drifted across the courtyard like confetti. Polite laughter, perfume, the shuffle of expectation. I arrived at 11:45 a.m., carrying nothing but a slim black folder and calm. The kind of calm that comes when you've rehearsed justice down to the minute. Inside, the air hummed with music. Strings warming up, waiters aligning flutes, $1,000 hour ticking toward its first scandal. Priya spotted me from the corridor and smiled in relief. "Mr. Dalton, we're right on schedule. Family photos in 15. I nodded. "Good. Let's make sure the truth's on time, too." She blinked, unsure what I meant, but she'd learn soon enough. At 12:37 p.m., Dirk texted, "Cameras up. B-cam feed live to monitor by bar." That meant eyes everywhere. Mine, the videographers, and Fate's. I stood by the terrace doors as the Harrington family assembled for photos. Gregory, today's patriarch, looked like an expensive mannequin, navy suit sharp enough to cut arrogance. His wife wore pearls big enough to rent by the hour. Two cousins adjusted their jackets, while a brother checked his reflection in a window, mouthing lines like an actor before curtain. Liam beamed beside Ava, love making him blind. She radiated triumph, dress sculpted to perfection, eyes glittering with the certainty that image had won. Family together. The photographer called. They arranged themselves into a perfect fraud. I walked forward, folder in hand, voice steady as a confession. "Before photos," I said, "could the father of the bride tell me the bride's middle name?" Lenses froze. Heads turned. Gregory blinked. "Margaret," he said smoothly. Ava flinched. The first crack. Her middle name was May. I let the silence hang, long enough for whispers to start. Then I opened the folder. "Interesting," I said, pulling out a glossy headshot. "The same man, different name. Because according to Gold Oak Talent Agency, you're not Gregory Harrington. You're Gordon Lacey, patriarch role, $250 an hour. The terrace went so quiet you could hear the fountain stop mid-bubble." "This is absurd," Ava hissed. "Stop embarrassing yourself." "No, sweetheart," I said softly. "I'm stopping you from embarrassing my son." I laid out the evidence like tarot cards. The booking sheet, the rate card, the production schedule with client, Ava Reynolds highlighted in yellow. "You didn't bring a family," I said. "You brought a cast." The blogger from Oakbrook Vows stepped forward, camera clicking like a metronome of exposure. Dirk's hidden B-cam zoomed in. Every flash of light was another nail in the coffin of pretense. "This is harassment," Ava snapped, voice cracking. "No," I said. "This is disclosure." I placed my cashier's check stub on the cocktail table beside the casting invoice. "I paid for the venue. You paid for the performance. Now everyone knows the price of class." Gregory, or Gordon, tugged at his tie. "This is a misunderstanding," he began, accent slipping halfway between Midwestern and stage school. "Oh?" I said. "Then tell the guests what call time means on this document." The crowd rippled with murmurs. Guests exchanged looks, pulling out phones, eyes darting between the family and the papers fluttering in the wind. Gina appeared at my side, composure carved in professionalism. "We have verified payment from the bride," she said evenly. "We can proceed with the ceremony, but vendor credits and identities must be correct." That single word, correct, landed like a gavel. The mother lowered her head. One of the cousins whispered something that sounded suspiciously like half-day rate. Ava's voice trembled. "Dad, please." I turned to Liam. "Son, her father can't help you. He's on a payroll." The blogger caught every syllable. Her camera flashed again, catching Ava's panic. the way she backed a step away from her rented relatives. "You have no right," she started. "Actually, I have every right," I said. "My name's on the guarantee. My money built this stage. And truth is part of the contract." Dirk's camera pivoted smoothly, his feed mirrored on the hidden monitor inside the bar. Guests watching through the reflection gasped as their perfect tableau fractured. One of the hired cousins muttered, "Can we wrap this?" "Not yet," I said. "We haven't gotten to the credits." I picked up the final sheet, the invoice total, 7,500. I held it up. "For less than 8 grand, you could have bought an entire bloodline." The violinist, unsure whether to keep playing, stopped mid-note. The silence after felt holy. Ava tried one last act. "You're jealous. You never belonged here." "No," I said. "You never existed here." Behind us, the blogger clicked another photo, murmuring, "Got it." Then Liam spoke for the first time, voice low and heavy. "Is it true, Ava?" Her lips parted, but nothing came out. She looked at her father, then at the ring on her finger, then at me. The only honest thing in her expression was fear. The mother reached for her purse. "We should go." "Yes," I said, before someone asks for autographs. The terrace erupted into whispers. Guests edged away, unsure whether to stay for the ceremony or the fallout. Gina's staff quietly pulled down the Harrington family sign from the seating board. I turned to Liam. "Son, I'm sorry you had to learn like this, but better now than after the credits roll." He nodded once, stunned, tears threatening, but dignity holding the line. Ava crumpled into a chair, head in her hands, veil trembling. I almost pitied her, almost. But pity's just mercy before proof, and she'd already had enough of both. I looked around, taking in the scene, the stone terrace, the wilted mums, the camera lights catching fragments of truth in motion. This was never revenge for me, it was reclamation. A quiet man's way of saying, "I'm not for sale." As Dirk's lens pulled focus on my face, I said, "Class isn't what you inherit. It's what you pay for with integrity." Then I walked off the terrace, leaving her world to collapse on its rented foundation. Behind me, the faint click of the blogger's camera followed like applause. The terrace emptied the way a theatre clears after the curtain drops, half in disbelief, half in gossip. Guests scattered in murmurs and sideways glances, phones out, pretending to check messages while filming the wreckage. The air smelled like roses and burnt sugar, the scent of something beautiful that had gone too far. Inside, Priya moved like a commander under fire, her headset buzzing with questions from staff. "Hold the ceremony," she ordered quietly. "Shift champagne service to the lobby. Keep everyone calm." When she saw me, she exhaled through her nose, half shock, half respect. "You really planned this, didn't you?" "Only as much as she rehearsed her family," I said. By the ballroom doors, Liam stood frozen between two worlds, the one he'd believed in and the one I'd just dismantled. "Dad," he started, but the word broke in half. You humiliated her." "No," I said softly. "I unmasked her." He looked at Ava, still in the bridal suite doorway, her rented father's hand hovering uselessly over her shoulder. The family kept their eyes low, whispering to each other like actors who'd forgotten their lines. One of them muttered something about half-day rate and contract breach. Priya approached the couple, professional tone steady as a metronome. "Miss Reynolds, the venue must address misrepresentation under Clause 9.3. We can proceed, but signage and credits must be corrected." Ava blinked, eyes glassy. "Corrected?" "Yes," Priya said. "Accurate names only." Within minutes, staff quietly replaced the Harrington family table card with plain white tent cards, no names, just numbers. A florist trimmed away the gold ribbons. Symbolic maybe, but necessary. By 3 o'clock, Gina called a short meeting in her office. Me, Ava, and Priya. The blogger waited outside the door with her camera bag, pretending to check her phone while listening through thin walls. Gina laid out the paperwork, calm as ever. "We can proceed with a scaled-back reception or cancel the event under misrepresentation." Ava's voice was tight. "We'll proceed," Gina nodded. "Then all service providers must be credited correctly. No false identities." That was the first time I saw Ava without performance, just a woman watching her empire of mirrors collapse. I looked at her. "You could have told him the truth," I said. "He would have loved you anyway." Her eyes darted toward Liam. "Would he have? You think love survives shame?" "Only the kind worth keeping," I said. She straightened, trying to regain footing. "Fine, proceed," she repeated, like it was still her show. But even her voice sounded smaller now, like she was auditioning for a role that had already been cast. When we walked back out to the terrace, guests had divided themselves into quiet factions, team scandal and team denial. Some offered polite smiles, others avoided eye contact altogether. The blogger caught my gaze from across the room and lifted her camera slightly, as if to say, "Still rolling." During the reception, the quartet returned to safer melodies. No one danced. The family slipped away one by one, disappearing before the entrees even reached the tables. Ava stayed, brittle and unmoving beside Liam, answering questions with one-word lies that wilted mid-air. When it was time for toasts, Priya looked at me warily. "You still want to speak?" "Always," I said. I stood, glass of water in hand. Every eye in the room turned toward me, the silence thick enough to bend. "Class," I said, "isn't money. It's honesty with receipts." A few nervous laughs, a few sighs. I raised my glass to my son. "To truth. May we never confuse appearance for worth." Liam lifted his glass, voice barely a whisper. "To truth." Ava didn't raise hers as I sat. The blogger caught that frame. The father who'd refused to fund a lie. The bride who'd finally run out of script. By the time the band packed up, the terrace lights flickered low. The fake Harringtons were long gone, their check likely already disputed. The blogger's post went live before midnight. Who are the Harringtons? Vendor or family? 2 side-by-side photos. Gregory's headshot next to his agency listing captioned, "Authenticity costs extra." By morning, it had 10,000 shares. Monday, September 23rd. My kitchen smelled like burnt toast and printer ink, the scent of aftermath. On the table lay a neat folder, courtesy of Marco. He'd labeled it Case File, Reynolds Harrington Fraud. Inside were the emails, the signed agency agreement, and a memo he'd written like a police report. Client A. Reynolds booked Harrington family through Gold Oak Talent for wedding appearance. Total, $7,500. Prior engagements, product launch, charity gala. He pushed his coffee toward me. "You don't see this level of delusion often," he said. "Usually people fake careers, not bloodlines." I flipped through the evidence, page after page of glossy lies. "Guess it's easier to rent love than earn respect," I said. He chuckled, but his eyes stayed serious. "She's lucky you just exposed her, not sued her. I'm not done," I said quietly. "I just prefer paperwork to fire." I wired him the remaining $2,300, total investigation cost. $6,800, worth every cent, proof. Is the cleanest revenge there is. By 10 a.m., I was at the forest preserve near Aurora, the same picnic spot where I'd taught Liam to ride a bike when he was 6. He was already there, sitting on a weathered bench, eyes red from too many sleepless nights. The silence between us carried everything words couldn't fix. "I loved her," he said finally. "I know," I said. "I thought she loved me back." "She probably loved what you gave her, a story she could sell." He flinched, then nodded slowly. "You could have told me earlier. You wouldn't have believed me earlier." He stared at the ground. "She called you low class." "Yeah." He looked up, eyes wet. "She was wrong." I slid the memo across the bench. He read in silence, every line, every invoice, every proof of deceit. By the time he reached the end, he was shaking. "She actually paid them?" "Cash transfer," I said. "Zelle receipt and everything. Your fiancé's family was payroll." He let out a broken laugh, then covered his face. "God," I defended her. "I yelled at Mom's photo, said you were being judgmental." I laid a hand on his shoulder. "Love blinds the best of us. That's why truth needs receipts." He nodded, slow and heavy. "What happens now?" "You move forward, you heal, and you never apologize for expecting honesty." That afternoon, my inbox filled with quiet victories. Gina emailed the finalized ledger, guarantor status removed. Final payment, recorded under A. Reynolds, Clause 9.3, misrepresentation documented. In the margin, she'd written a short note. Thank you for protecting our integrity. Priya sent a text next. You were right. We prefer real families. Then the blogger's post hit 40,000 views before sunset. Headline, The 7500 Family, a wedding built on performance. One comment stood out, respect to the father who paid for truth instead of pretense. At 5:18 p.m., Ava texted me. The message was long, brittle, and theatrical. You've ruined my reputation and my engagement. I expect compensation for emotional damages, lost image value, and breach of privacy. I smiled and forwarded it to my lawyer with a short note. Respond professionally. Attached documentation. He replied within the hour. To A. Reynolds. Our client declines. All further claims will be met with the attached verified evidence. Gold Oak invoices, correspondence, and recorded statements. We attached everything, emails, screenshots, audio of her saying aesthetic reasons about my toast. The truth notarized by reality. 2 days later, Gold Oak Talent issued a statement on their website. We do not disclose private bookings, but we emphasize that all clients are responsible for representation accuracy. Translation, she's on her own. By Friday, Liam returned the engagement ring to her apartment. No drama, no shouting, just quiet. She didn't answer the door, but the ring sat neatly in its velvet box, taped to an envelope marked Final Delivery. When he came back to my house that evening, he said, She wanted a legacy of luxury. You gave me something better, a lesson that'll outlast her makeup. I smiled. That's your inheritance, son. He hugged me like a boy again, tight and unguarded. That night, for the first time in months, I slept without replaying the tasting scene in my head. Justice doesn't always make noise. Sometimes it just means closing a ledger and knowing every line balances. Sunday morning arrived soft and gold, the kind of September light that makes even mistakes look merciful. I brewed coffee strong enough to stand a spoon upright and opened the curtains. Oakbrook's maples had begun to turn, edges tinged red, as if the leaves themselves were blushing over everything they'd witnessed last weekend. On the kitchen table sat the yellow legal pad that had carried me through the storm. I flipped to the last page where I'd written, Truth must arrive on time. Beneath it, I added a new line, and peace must be earned. I took my late wife's photo off the mantel, just like I had the week before the tasting, but this time I wasn't asking her for strength. I was reporting back. It's over, I said. He's okay. The house hummed with ordinary sounds again, the drip of the coffee pot, the faint rattle of the window vent. I opened my notebook and did what every project manager in me needed to do. Close the books. Final ledger, $18,400 deposit, a protected $13,400 balance, paid by Ava Reynolds, $6,800 investigation. Marco, fully compensated $3,200 florist estimate, cancelled before commitment. Net liability, 0. Net lesson, priceless. That line made me laugh out loud. Even accountants need poetry sometimes. I stared at the receipts spread across the table, each one stamped with a date and an emotion. Rage, humiliation, satisfaction, relief. They all had paper trails. I gathered them into an envelope, sealed it, and wrote proof of life across the front. Then I placed it in the freezer behind a bag of frozen peas, the same spot where my wife used to hide emergency cash. She'd have appreciated the symbolism. By afternoon, my phone buzzed non-stop with links. Neighbors, co-workers, even a few old classmates were sending me the viral blog post. The $7,500 family had made the rounds on Reddit and Facebook, spreading like wildfire. The comment sections were merciless, but for once, not toward me. People had opinions, empathy, outrage, all pointed in the right direction. At the gas station later that day, the attendant, a kid barely 20, looked up from my card and said, Hey, you're that guy from the wedding thing, right? Respect, man, I smiled. Just did what any dad should do. He laughed. Wish mine would have. He just drinks and ignores stuff. Then you'll have to break that pattern, I said, handing him the receipt. Back home, Liam showed up in a beat-up Honda he'd borrowed from a friend. His new start, humble and honest. He was moving into a one-bedroom apartment in Aurora, small, but his. I got a second-hand couch, he said. Could use a hand getting it upstairs. I followed him there, and we spent an hour wrestling the thing up a narrow staircase that had clearly never been tested by furniture. By the time we dropped it into the living room, we were both laughing so hard it hurt. He looked around the space. Bare walls, mismatched chairs, hope in raw form. No actors here, he said, wiping sweat from his brow. Just us, I replied. We sat on that couch with pizza boxes on the floor, the city humming outside. He took a deep breath. I think I'm finally seeing what Mom meant when she said dignity's not something you buy. I nodded. You don't even earn it. It's just what's left after you stop selling yourself short. He grinned. You and your quotable wisdom. Somebody's got to narrate the credits, I said. As dusk settled, I drove home past the venue. The terrace lights were on again for another wedding. Different couples, same hope. I parked across the street for a minute, watching guests laugh, glasses clink, a father straighten his tie before walking his daughter down the aisle. I whispered, "Good luck, kid." Not to him, but to truth itself. When I got home, I locked the door, switched off the porch light, and stood a moment longer in the quiet. The house didn't feel empty anymore. It felt clean. Some wounds don't close with apologies, they close with accountability. And some men don't get redemption from forgiveness. They get it from balance sheets that finally read zero. 2 weeks later, I opened my mailbox and found an envelope that looked expensive enough to have its own mortgage. Ivory paper, raised lettering, faint whiff of cologne and denial. The return address stopped me cold. Gold Oak Talent Agency. For a second, I thought it might be a lawsuit. But when I slid it open, I found a crisp business card tucked between glossy brochures. We were impressed by your composure under pressure. Would you be interested in grandfather roles for regional commercials? Rate 200 AT. I laughed out loud right there on the porch. My dog barked inside like he wanted in on the joke. The universe has a sense of humor. It just prefers deadpan delivery. I stuck the card to my fridge with a magnet shaped like a wrench. Guess I finally got invited to the club, I muttered. Then, because irony deserved respect, I walked to the freezer and slid the card beside the envelope of receipts labeled Proof of Life. The two sat together like matching trophies, one for revenge, one for restraint. That same afternoon, I stopped for groceries at the Jewel on 75th. Near the floral aisle, a woman with a camera bag waved at me. It was the blogger from Oak Brook Vows, Mr. Dalton. The post hit 100,000 views. I noticed, I said. We changed our tagline because of you, she added, proud smile blooming. Now it reads, we credit reality. That's the nicest compliment I've ever been paid, I said, meaning it. On my way out, my phone buzzed, an email from Priya. The planner, we've added a new verification step for all guarantors. The team calls it the Oak Brook Protocol. Clients aren't thrilled, but our lawyers love it. Thank you. I stood by my truck reading it twice. Systemic change. That was better than any applause. Revenge burns hot, but justice cools into policy. That's how you know it's stuck. When I got home, the air smelled like rain and leaves. I sat on the porch steps as the street turned bronze in the setting sun. The world was quiet again, ordinary in a way that felt holy. Headlights swung into the driveway, Liam's car, dented Honda still holding up like an honest friend. He got out with a six-pack and a grin that reached both eyes this time. Dinner? He asked. I'll cook, I said. Fancy, he teased. Low class, I corrected, smiling. The good kind. We grilled burgers in the backyard. He told me about his students. The one kid who reminded him of himself, stubborn and big-hearted. I told him about the talent agency's offer, and he nearly dropped his plate laughing. They want you to play grandpa? Apparently, I've got the look of wisdom and unpaid invoices. You should do it, he said between laughs. Get paid for being yourself. Son, I said, that's the dream. After dinner, I walked him to his car. The night smelled of charcoal and wet earth. You sure you're okay? I asked. He nodded. Better than okay. You taught me something I didn't learn in any classroom. What's that? That truth has bad timing, but perfect aim. I smiled. She missed out on a good man, he shrugged. Her loss built mine. When he drove away, I stood under the porch light a moment longer. The bulb hummed softly, insects orbiting like tiny satellites. I thought about Ava, about the fake father, about the perfect photo that never made it to her Instagram. Maybe one day she'd understand what I was trying to teach her, that money can't buy class because class doesn't cost money. It costs honesty. I locked the door behind me, turned the deadbolt, a ritual that felt like punctuation. Then I said it, the same way I'd rehearsed it 100 times in my head. The line that belonged not to anger but to closure. You didn't lose me. You gave me away. And I walked back with the receipts. The house sighed into silence. The kind that sounds like peace. And somewhere in a freezer behind a bag of peas, the truth stayed cold, intact and finally complete.